Phyllis Wheatley was her naval and outie. Timothy Fitch, who her buyer specifically directed the captain of the Phyllis not to take slaves whose navels protruded out. For some reason, this was unattractive to buyers, an unusual sight that scared them, a sign that this particular piece of property was either diseased or impure. After I read that, I looked at my navel. I wouldn't take it. 2, always start with the water crossing, the memory of Juju and cassava, cascade of fingers planting ancestors into daughters' hair, not the losing. Start with the songs like and Mahima, Mahimo, Mahimo, Kakelande Kapupe. We wake every day looking over our shoulders for the refraction of Koras and Grigri in the silver sun. Shells falling into hands of elders as they trade cowrie. Always start with the water crossing when you remember us, with song and prayer to life, and lift us up out of the field, send us back to Ibolandi, the place where we were first spun. 3, I never knew earth could be fire under my tongue. Taste of gravel and grit in all my food. Slavery is a grit lodged in your eye, one you can never get out. Briar under the tongue you can never spit. I speak with the memory of 1,000 tongues, all mute now. Buried in the antebellum earth beneath my feet as I shed cotton wool from stem. This earth is a bed of fire under my feet. In 1860, there were 4 million of us here, Africans bent at the stem. Did you feel the earth tremor when we laughed, cried, inhaled at the same time, shedding our water and blood into the earth? Wasn't this a kind of fire? 4, I look for you in every face I see, Phyllis Wheatley. This kind of loss is a thing that can't be unbraided. Even when you are free, you are not. After everything, your back was the bridge of stars they walked to travel here. Your navel hidden by a calico shift. You brought them civilization, raised it up from these Indian lands with the language of a child, and we, with our bare hands and our tears and our blood and our hair, our children brought them the moon because we knew the language of rice, of cotton, of tobacco, how to plant the earth's kora, a braid. 5, in sleep, I hear the wings of my Mindi grandmothers of Sierra Leone. They come for me in my dreams, whispering of a different time. Breath smells of peppers smothered in fish, of goat milk, yams. My name is not the sound of hands who unharness things from the earth. I am the daughter of water buffaloes, bearing fruit in the season of the blood moon. I will not break. I will wait. We will not break. We will live. One day, like you, Phyllis, we will all fly away.
Today is Juneteenth. I'm going to be honest, part of the reason why I think I really wanted to do this and work with Shonda and Sophronia and stuff on this is because up until, I didn't know about Juneteenth until I was in my 20s. It was not taught to me. But once I found it, it increasingly became more and more important, and then I found out like a lot of people didn't really know about it. Then it became a holiday. So people have a day off but don't, I think, know entirely why. So we thought we'd talk to you about it. So on June 19th in 1865, Gordon Granger of the Union Army arrived in Galveston, Texas to inform enslaved African Americans of their freedom and that the Civil War had ended. General Granger's announcement put into effect the Emancipation Proclamation, which had been issued nearly 2.5 years earlier on January 1st, 1863, by President Abraham Lincoln. So a common misconception is Lincoln freed the slaves. He just said, "You're free," and then the slave owners were like, "All right, you're free to go." It's not quite the truth of it. Juneteenth is an annual commemoration of this event and the end of slavery in the United States after the Civil War. It has been celebrated by African Americans since the late 1800s. It is the longest running Black holiday, also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Celebration Day. The day was first recognized as a federal holiday in 2021 when Joe Biden, I call him Daddy Joe, signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law after the efforts of Lula Briggs, Galloway, Orville Lee, and truly countless others. So how did events collide to keep some Black people enslaved 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed on January 1st, 1863? Here are some of the elements that caused this delay. The ratification of the 13th Amendment took some time. Slave-holding states like Texas weren't officially under Union laws. And 5 civilized tribes was a factor as well. Shonda will be talking more about that. So, when did freedom come for Black people in North America? The 13th Amendment, Section 1 says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction. Section 2, Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. The 13th Amendment is also very complicated because of that little loophole in there. So, free, except if you're incarcerated. So if you're incarcerated, you can be put into a kind of slavery. So the prison industrial complex is a for-real problem. The amendment was passed by the Senate on April 8, 1864, by the House of Representatives on January 31st, 1865, and ratified by the required 27 of the 36 states on December 6, 1865, and proclaimed on December 18th. It was the first of 3 Reconstruction amendments adopted following the American Civil War. I find it's very important there. 27 of the 36 states. So, not every state was about freedom. Again, it was not some like overnight thing. States with little or no Union or Union soldier presence refused or ignored the order to free enslaved Black people. There was also the issue of the 5 civilized tribes.
So the 5 civilized tribes we have here, the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Creek, the Muskogee Creek, the Chickasaw, And the Seminole, those who fought on the side of the Confederates refused to free their slaves. So that was a part of those states who, that would be the Mississippi, last tribes were pushed into Oklahoma and Alabama. They already owned black slaves, they took their black slaves with them. And some of them were forced to enroll their black slaves, those who fought on the other side, quote unquote, as a punishment, which is why you had the disenrollment of the Cherokee, the freedmen several years ago. So those tribes who wouldn't release their slaves were on the side of the Confederates. So for another 2 years, they were still enslaved. They were on sovereign, quote unquote, sovereign Indian territory at the time, so they could do what they wanted until they were forced to comply.
I feel like, and that's why I'm super, if you haven't read Black Indian, Black Shonda, you really should. Afro-Indigenous history, specifically in relation to Juneteenth and this larger story of Black history, oftentimes gets erased. And so please check that out. States that ignored emancipation, border states, Delaware, Maryland, that one really made me sad because I'm from Maryland. Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri, Texas, and other states. Reasons bondage continued. Again, slave owners started to kill slaves if they tried to leave. Slavers moved to Texas to keep their people enslaved. Enslaved black people had no support, as emancipation didn't free all slaves, only those in the Union. Emancipation didn't apply to Indian tribes, as Shonda pointed out, in Indian country. Galveston, Texas was the last known stronghold. Shonda mentioned this, I wanted to put part of this treaty up. But in July of 1866, a treaty was signed between the Cherokee and the U.S. government abolishing slavery among the Native nation. Amendments were made later that year that stated all native-born Cherokee, all Indians and whites legal members of the nation by adoption, not free, who have been liberated by voluntary act or their former owners or by law, as well as free colored persons who are in the country at the commencement of the rebellion and are more residents there, or who may return within 6 months from the 19th day of July 1866, and their descendants who reside within the limits of Cherokee Nation shall be taken and deemed to be citizens of the Cherokee Nation. This treaty helped end slavery for the Cherokee Nation. Also that year, the U.S. treaty was signed with the Choctaw or Chickasaw. Article 2 of that accord dictating the Choctaws and Chickasaws hereby covenant and agree that henceforth neither slavery nor voluntary servitude otherwise than in punishment of crime. And there's that article again, where the parties shall have been duly convicted in accordance with laws applicable to all members of the particular nation shall ever exist in said nations. So these treaties helped end slavery, particularly black slavery. So, one of the things we wanted to do is get your impressions, do something together.
Yeah. And another point too, I worked at Hampton University for 13 years. Does anyone know where Hampton University is in Hampton, Virginia? So one of the interesting points is that supposedly the Emancipation Proclamation was read on Hampton's campus underneath what they call the Emancipation Oak, like this great oak tree. And prior to the reading of that, there was a black woman who was likely mixed race, because she was very light, Mary Peake. And she was already educating and teaching formerly enslaved people, the nations of that land, so that would be the Powhatan, the Nottoway people of that land, because they were already kind of in that area. And then when the Emancipation Proclamation was read, Juneteenth, for us, Juneteenth didn't happen yet. I'm so sorry, Juneteenth hadn't happened yet, but it was a celebration then at Hampton, and for those slaves, and then thereafter for everyone else. And people didn't know that there was still a group of people who were not enslaved, who were not free, considered free. I'm gonna always air quote free. Some of the references in my poem I took directly from this conversation about Juneteenth. When I have a line in here that says, what is that, free? Not always. And then I wanted to bring Phyllis Wheatley in because, of course, I'm a poet, but I think about how she crossed. She was a child at 8 years old on one of those slave ships. So I wanted to bring her in as a mnemonic, you know, as a character, as a poet, because I'm a poet as well, and then incorporate her into the poem to hopefully give you all a bit more sense of how important Juneteenth is for us. So what we're going to do is ask you all to respond to the presentation in any way, shape, or form that you can. And we're going to do this in a group poem way. You might never have done a group poem before. But we're going to go around and ask everyone to give 1 or 2 words. I'll move over here, this is the mic. Give us 1 or 2 words, or say 1 or 2 words that impressed you with regards to either my poem or some of the history or the dates or the data. But 1 or 2 words, and to the best of our ability, we're going to write all of them down, and then we're going to read it at the end. It will be our Juneteenth group poem. So we'll start here.
2.5 years.
Lynn?
For me, it's Shane and Rachel.
Sarah,
Free.
Free to what?
Finally, education.
Wow.
Finally, education.
Mine is tears.
Got minus tears. Did you get minus tears?
Minus tears.
Let's make it tears.
Okay.
Water crossing.
Water crossing.
Two and a half months, it was a couple of months between the time General got down to Galveston, between the time the war ended. Lost time.
Lost time.
Native born.
Native born.
Emancipation Oak.
Emancipation.
Oak.
I'm going to say umbilical cord, because when you talk about that navel, to me, Audi feels like connected, like that child is still connected. Umbilical cord. UM. Umbilical, UM.
Said Jubilee.
Sad.
Said.
Ocean and Aria.
Take it, Tony.
I'm gonna do freedom question mark. Stipulations.
Belly button and property.
Belly button
Belly button and property.
and property. Belly button and property.
I would think 156 years, which is between 1865 and 2021.
Arrivals and accept. Tax version. Thanks.
Veil of history. Veil of history.
Fail.
Like a veil.
Heart song.
Heart song.
Freedmen. Descendants.
He said I have none.
He said,
He said I have none.
that would work.
You want to put I have none? From poetry.
I'll say, union and 13.
Hereby and henceforth.
oh, the heaviness of the celebration.
Language of cotton and rice. Language of cotton and rice.
Harnessing spirit.
I think we're getting this left. Sound of us.
So, 2.5 years, 5 civilized tribes, shame and great joy, despair and knowledge, broken chains, freed to life. Finally, education, tears, water crossing lost time, native-born emancipation, oak, umbilical cord, said jubilee. Ocean aria, freedom, stipulations, belly button, property, 156 years, 1865 to 2021, arrivals, accept, veil of history, heart song, freedmen, descendants, servitude, hallelujah, mourning, moving river, have none union, 13th hereby and henceforth, oh, the heaviness of the celebration, language of cotton, rice, 2736, harnessing spirit, the song of us now told.